Okay, I think we're going to start. So if you want to be a part, if you have questions, in just a few moments we'll let you raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone so everybody can hear. Again, we appreciate you, those of you who are interested in staying, wanting to know, can you guys hear me? Wanting to know what's going on in the life of your church. This is about your opportunity. If you have questions that you would like to ask, you can feel free. In just a few moments, Charlie, our chairperson of finance, will come and give us a financial update, but let's start with prayer. Let us pray. Oh, most gracious and holy God, we give you thanks for your church and for this church here at Galilee and for the good works that you're doing, for those who faithfully stood before us this morning and became members of this body of Christ, for the little one that we baptized, for all the little ones and youth and adults that you've graciously called to this time and this place to be the church together. God, we just pray that we might continue to be faithful in our mission and in our service to you. God, we're grateful for our staff who work so diligently to prepare each week to lead our youth and children, to sing, to lead us in worship. God, we are so thankful that you have called us to be the church together. And now, God, we would pray this morning that your Spirit would direct our thinking, our speaking, and our actions. In the name of the Holy God. Amen. So, before Charlie comes, I don't want this whole thing to be about money, but I'm going to let Charlie go first because your questions about where we're going might be reflective upon finances. But I want to say one of the first things I want to do is this. Christmas Eve is important, right? And so we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what is the best time for Christmas Eve services. So I would like your feedback. We traditionally do the 3 p.m. children's service. No, 3 p.m. is at the Lansdowne Chapel, 3 p.m. over there, 5 p.m. the children's service here, and then we do 7, right? And then we've done 9 in the past, and then last year we did 11. And so I would like to hear your feedback about which of those times you would like. I don't necessarily want to do 5, 7, 9, and 11, but I don't want to do 11 if nobody's going to come to it. And, so I want to get some feedback about what you guys are thinking. So I'm assuming everybody is good with the 5 p.m. service. That's the children's interactive. Nobody's going to complain about that, right? It's a good time for kids, right? And then the other service that has done well, I think, is the 7 o'clock service. Anybody object to doing the 7 o'clock service? I think the issue comes down to whether we do a 9 o'clock service or an 11 o'clock service. So that's the feedback I'd like to hear from you guys. How many of you like and would attend an 11 o'clock service? Okay. How many of you prefer a 9 o'clock service? Well, that was hard. That's right down the middle almost. Yes, sir. Well, at 11 o'clock, I think there was like 112. And we didn't have of course, we didn't have the 9 o'clock, so I don't know what that would have been like. The early service, I think we had a total of like 600 between the 3 services on Christmas Eve. I think it was like 620 or something like that. Okay. No, I've never thought about that. Which I'm not opposed to that. Doing it at 10 instead of 9 or 11. Just kind of breaking in the middle of it. So, I'm one of those traditionalists. I like the 11 o'clock service, but I also don't like being here all day. But I will say that I came from a church where I was literally there from 12 noon until 1 a.m. So didn't get to leave. So, so I'm open to whatever works. But since we don't have a large consensus here, I will put together a survey and put it in the bulletin and get a larger feedback. I was hoping that we would have a clear breakdown here, but that didn't happen. So we will include more people in the discussion. I would, and I mentioned, yes? 11. Okay.
For Christmas.
All right. So, preference between 9. Let's do it that way. You may have preference between 9. Preference for 11. Okay. I will still ask, thank you. I will still ask the congregation to get their feedback. I'd like for you guys to use Christmas Eve as an opportunity to invite people to church. I mean, I was, numbers were good on Christmas Eve, but I came from my last church had over 2,000 people on Christmas Eve. And so I was when I looked at it, I was like, wow, where's everybody at? But use Christmas as an opportunity to invite people to worship. The children's thing is great. It's fun, and it's pop-up, so there's nothing that has to be planned. There's no work that goes into it. It just happens. And then the other two are very traditional and, with a variety of activities. So just use it as an opportunity to invite your friends and neighbors. For people who don't go to church, it might just take that one invitation on Christmas Eve to get them back into church on a regular basis, right? And Christmas Eve is typically non-threatening to people, right? Because we're going to talk about the baby Jesus, and we're not going to talk about anything too controversial. And so it's typically a non-threatening way to get people to come back to church. That being out of the way, I'm going to let Charlie come and talk about finances. Finances are not all that we do, but sometimes finances dictate what we do. And so Charlie is our financial. Some of you might know, but might not know, but the offerings that we receive here, plus the offerings that we receive over at Lansdowne Wood, goes into one big pot. People have asked about that. It all goes into one big pot, and we pay the bills, all the bills from that big pot. And so our budget is roughly 1.2 plus million, a few pennies here and there, $1 million. And I'm going to let Charlie come and talk about where we are. And if you have more detailed questions about our budget, I'll give him the opportunity to do that. We have some handouts too, right? We'll pass those around, and then we'll give you opportunity to.
Good morning, everyone. If y'all want to join me down here, you're happy to, like Susie does. No, not even my accountant and finance friends. You can bring your calculators and everything. So thank you guys for being here and giving me a chance to talk to y'all. We've been coming to Galilee for, I was trying to think about it this morning, it's probably about 9 years since we moved up from Florida. And I guess I've been in this role since 2020 when Jason had asked me to come in, and then a lot of things changed after that point. So, but it's been wonderful, and it's great to see all that we're able to do for our community here through what we do with all the giving. Background on me, I'm a CPA. I've been in public accounting for a little over 25 years. So if you want to get into the debits and credits and stuff, happy to get into more detail. But what we tried to do was give you guys a bit more of a high-level summary of where we're at. For those of you who were at the Charge Conference earlier this year, or late last year, I can't remember exactly when it was, in the winter, we went over what was our budget. And so that budget was, like Pastor Mike said, about $1.2 million. And that comes in pretty regularly throughout the year. If you think about it, it's about $100,000 a month of different expenses and activities of the church. And so on the handout, you'll see there's a slide that sort of breaks that down as far as percentages. So for every dollar that comes in, what kind of percentage goes to the different pieces. So I'm looking at this page, if y'all want to follow along. So the biggest piece of what our gifts go to is for our staffing to support our ministries, our pastors as well as our staff. And so some of you might be asking, what does that percentage compare to other churches and everything? How does that compare to what Galilee's been in the past? I would say that that number is fairly low. Typically you see that number being a much larger percentage. Even for Galilee, it's been a higher percentage in the past. So that's where we've been tightening our belts. But typically you could see that that number could be north like 60, 70% of your total budget. If we had more folks, we could be doing more things to help support our church, help there support our communities. But the one thing that it does reflect this year is that we have 2 full-time pastors. So that is a huge step up from last year, and we'll talk about that. Some of the other things that are on there, we talk about our mortgage. One of the big things that happened this year is that we had to refinance our mortgage. Just different from, I would say, personal home mortgages. The commercial mortgages are slightly different, and so those have maturity schedules that are a little bit more frequent. So the finance committee, along with the trustees, Kathy, everyone, looked at what would be the best choices out there, and what we ended up doing was refinancing with the Virginia United Methodist Development Company. That is a piece of the Virginia Conference, where their purpose is to help support churches, and all they hold are loans with churches. And so when we looked at the terms for them to compare to what you get from commercial banks, it was much more reasonable as far as interest rates, and also the district helped us out with buying down the interest rate as well. So we're talking, it was several, I can't remember the exact numbers, Kathy's not here, so, but I think it was a couple percentage points lower than what you'd get at any commercial bank. So we feel really good about that. The mortgage balance is ballparkish about 2.7 million. We're continuing to make principal and interest payments on that. Based on the way the loan is structured, the total payments under the new maturity schedule are a little less, but we're continuing to make the same payments we did before. So that way we're paying a little bit more in principal than what we had in the past. So we're continuing to do that. Apportionments is another big piece you'll see on there. For those of you not as familiar, those are fees that we pay to the United Methodist Church to help support the church and its activities, ministries, things like pensions for our pastors. Those come out typically annually, and it's sort of fixed by church. So we continue to pay those in full and on time. The other big cost you'll see on there is, let's see, the green, the building grounds technology. Think of that like all the things that it takes to keep the building on, keep the lights on, right? So your power bill's in there, your water bill's in there, different repairs that are being made, insurance, all the typical things like that you might pay on your home are in there. Just if you look at the size of our home here, it's a lot bigger, so those numbers are a lot bigger. So when you think about things like the power bill, your power bill might be a couple $100 a month. This one's a couple $1,000 a month, right? So when you extend it out, it ends up being just much bigger numbers. So, but what's great is that the church has been, and your staff have been very diligent about every dollar that comes in. And so on the back, you'll see kind of like what our expenses looking and everything. And so, like I said, it's about $100,000 a month that comes in, and it's fairly consistent, right? And I think the one thing to take away this year is that salaries have gone up a lot, again, because of the 2 full-time pastors. And yet the giving has gone up as well. So we appreciate and thank everything that everyone is doing to help support that. Now, while you'll see on that page that there's a deficit number, that is, I guess, how could I say this? You know, at this point in time, that's kind of where we're sitting, right? Because expenses will come in pretty much steady throughout the year. Giving has variability to it throughout the year, right? So at the beginning of the year, it tends to start a little higher. Summer tends to be lower, and then it picks back up towards the end of the year, right? And so we're just coming off the summer when it's typically at a lower point, right? So you'll see that's about the same where it was this time last year, right? About the same amount in light of additional expenses as well as additional giving. So net, we're looking pretty good compared to where we were last year. I know it's a negative number, so we're very hopeful that that will improve as we go throughout the rest of the year. We did end last year sort of with a deficit, but we're going to have to see where that comes up, and we'll continue to be tracking that this year. So that's sort of the main budget or pot that Mike was talking about. But the other thing on the first page is that there's other gifts that are given too, and these are to specific ministries, and that's sort of in that the lower right side, this little table down here, of what have been sort of the top 5 areas where the church, where you have given money to the church. And what's great to see in that, and we should all be proud of, is continuing to support all these different activities, and that those levels have continued to increase. So when there's a need or an ask, you guys do step up and help support that, and we thank you very much for that. But those are gifts that are specifically tied to those items. So backpack buddies, the Lenten offering to fix one of the AC units. That's money, the way this works, it's sort of earmarked and tagged to just those activities that can't go in the general fund. But I'll pause there. Oh, I'm sorry, the only thing I didn't mention was the school, sorry. Preschool is doing very well. We have about 40-ish, 47, great. 47 students enrolled. We also have aftercare programs. We did a lot this summer trying to establish summer programs, making more use of the space we have down there. And so there's a lot of good things that are happening there. The school brings in quite a bit. It does cover its expenses and does contribute a little bit to the church afterwards to go towards the general expenses of the church, like the operations, the lights, insurance, all those types of things at the end of the day. But Pastor Mike, I don't know if you're going to get into that later. Or what. Yeah, so we'll leave it at that. I can ramble on forever, so I'll pause. Questions, comments?
How are apportionments determined? I mean, what is that based on? I know it used to be on, things have changed over the years. So how is it today? How are they determined?
So primarily, it's no longer based on membership, so you don't have to worry about that. Primarily, it's based upon giving to the budget items, not counting specified mission giving or capital improvements. So basically, it's there. Now, I will tell you that our apportionments this year for 2026 will go up about 22%, which is pretty significant. But partially that is because of healthcare costs for clergy are ever increasing. And the way the conference does clergy health care, whether your pastor uses the insurance or not, if you have a full-time pastor, you have to pay for that. So I'm on my wife's policy, and we still have to, Galilee still has to pay. Her church has to pay the full price. You all have to pay the full price. Pastor Stephen's on his wife's policy, but we still have to pay the conference the full price for his insurance. So that alone for two pastors is about $42,000 in healthcare cost. So that's, to me, that's a lot. And plus, we have to pay into that as well. I think we pay another, my family pays another like $475 or something in addition to that. So that's a huge piece of it. The conference had gone through a period of cutting back staff in Richmond, and now our new bishop is increasing staff again, so there's a little bit of that as a piece of it. And quite frankly, everything just costs more. You know, one of the things that we did this summer at annual conference is we figured we weren't paying those people who work in Richmond at the conference office. They get a housing allowance if they're clergy, and they're only making $15,000 a year for housing, and that's way out of proportion to how much it costs to live in Richmond. So, you know, we had to adjust that as well. So it's primarily based on how much we give, basically now. There's a few other things that count, but most of it is on our giving. On what we did in so the 2026 is based upon what we did in 2024. So they take the numbers from 2024 and use that to set the apportionments for this year. And also, you have to remember, we used to have 400 more churches that we spread the apportionments out over. And because we had 400 churches disaffiliate, we had to pick up their percentage points, basically, to maintain where we were. So, yep.
You said earlier, half joking during service, that we're coming up on stewardship time, which we all realize happens in the fall. With Charlie's comment that giving dips over the summer, is there a way collectively we can think about how to encourage people? Like, I do my giving online, and so mine is steady all year long. How do we get more people to buy into that? I mean, I get the church envelopes are an old school thing, and a lot of people really like writing that check, but it would really help if we could stay steady in a steady state all year. How do we do that?
Well, in other places, and Charlie may have other ideas, but the only thing that you can do is keep reminding people that that's the best way to give. And the majority, I would say, the majority of money does come in through online and consistent giving. What fluctuates is the folks who are here one Sunday a month, and then during the summer they're not here at all. and so that money doesn't drop in the offering plate. I think that's where we see the biggest dip of it. And typically, this past year was very unusual. Typically, Easter is very high in giving on Easter Sunday, but every church, all of my friends said the same thing. Easter giving on Easter Sunday was down about 30, 40, 50% across the board. But you have to remember, at that time, people were worried about their jobs. You know, we just had a new president, inaugurated, so people were up in arms. So I'm hoping that as we move towards Christmas, we might see what they didn't give at Easter come in to help us get to where we need to be for the end of the year. I'm trying to be overly optimistic. Anybody else have any more questions that Charlie might need?
I do. I may have missed it because I'm having a lot of trouble hearing, but these net deficits, are they compounding? Is the 64 gone over to another year, or how are they made up? They seem substantial.
Yeah, so that's for each year. And so wherever we land for a year, that'll be that much less cash in the bank, right?
Or we don't spend all the line items in the budget, which, well, that doesn't count balance.
No, because this is cash. Yeah, so the books are pretty much cash basis, right? So whatever cash comes in, cash goes out. That's sort of reflected in those numbers. So it is something where more's going out than coming in, right? Simplest way to put it. And so what happens is there's less cash in the bank at the end of the day. You know, so no, there's not funds pulled from other areas. It's just coming from whatever reserve cash balance that the church has in the bank would cover those additional expenses beyond what giving has come in. So that's sort of the activity for the year versus, you know, just think about you have a bank balance, right? And you have income coming in and then you have charges going out, right? That balance is going to go up or down depending on how much you spend. So in this case, our cash balance has come down by the amount of those kind of net deficits.
How large is the church have? How long can we carry deficits?
The church has, thanks to some gifts from, I can't remember when it was, a while ago, they have reserves of, what is it? It's about $600,000. Yeah, oh, Kathy, thank you, you're back. Yeah, and so those are reserves that we hold for expenses, maintenance. When we had to replace the AC unit, you know, we would pull money out of that to cover those. And so effectively, we're eating into that balance. Yes, we have about, we were just talking about this at our finance meeting the past week. We have currently, I think it's about $250,000 invested with the Development Corp as money going in that they use to help fund the loans that they give to churches. All of it's covered by the property, right? And so that earns a fixed interest rate on it of, I think, around 4%. And then we talked about with the finance committee to take another $350,000 and put it into a short-term CD with a commercial bank, not leave it all with the Development Corp. And that interest rate was, I think, when Brian looked it up, yeah, it was around little less than 4 to 4%, depending on how interest rates move. So we are earning interest on the money that is out there, trying to do our best with that. But we're also wanting to leave at least 3 months worth of cash around to help cover just normal operating expenses for the church. Again, it's about $100,000 a month. But then keep in mind, you also have the school, you have backpack buddies, and those are other activities who need cash on hand to cover those. Other good questions? Anybody else? Okay. I also have copies of the budget that we handed out at Charge Conference that's more detailed. So if you don't have it, you want another copy, I have a few up here. So please come see me, and I'm happy to give you a copy of that. So, yes, ma'am.
Didn't we say during the service that we're looking for $30,000 for Backpack Buddies? But this benevolence is 21,819. What's the discrepancy?
So that's the money that's actually come in this year so far. Yep. Yeah, that's what's come in as far as gifts this year from the beginning of the year till now. The campaign that we're running is trying to fund for the school year, so the numbers don't line up exactly. What I was just trying to show is what giving has come in during 2025. Yeah. Yeah. So while that's in this calendar year, it probably would have been in last school year, if that makes sense. But still wanted to give a picture just of what's happening in total for 2025. The school year numbers do, yeah, they wiggle a little.
No one else has a question for Charlie? So I would just say, again, nobody likes to talk about finances, but we try to be as transparent as possible so you know where we are. I think it's really important when you look at that deficit number that you understand from last year you took on another full-time pastor. That's huge. That means you have to pay the pastor's salary, plus you have to pay the pastor's housing allowance, plus you have to pay the pastor's insurance, you have to pay the pastor's retirement, you have to pay for the pastor to go to annual conference, so all that adds up. And I'm going to give you a rough number, but because I don't remember exactly what it costs for us to have an associate. But typically to have an associate at provisional elder level, which is what Stephen is, you're looking at a minimum of $110,000 to $115,000 by the time you pay salary and benefits to have a full-time associate. And that's at the lowest end of the provisional scale. So, and that's just the reality. Of the churches that are around here, in comparison to Crossroads and Sterling, and we won't even count Flores. That's a whole nother world over there. But Crossroads and Sterling and Arcola, if you look at what you pay your associates, your associate pastor, we're on the lowest end. If you look at what you pay your senior pastor, we're on the lowest end. And even though you have more people in attendance than at least two of those churches, you're still on the lower end. You also have fewer staff members than most of those churches, and you certainly have fewer full-time staff members than those churches. And that doesn't even include, I know that one of those churches recently hired a full-time youth person, and their youth person makes almost as much as your senior pastor does. So, well, I do think our mortgage plays a huge part of that, and that's why I'd love for us to get rid of that mortgage. So somebody, if you win the lottery, please help us out. Our mortgage is still $2.4 million, I think, even after we refinanced it. We did get a lower monthly payment, but we committed to continuing to pay what we were paying before so we can lower that. But you all have had a mortgage basically for 40 years. A mortgage of some sort for 40 years. And truth be known, we need another mortgage because there's a lot of repair work that needs to be done. A lot of repair work. You look at our parking lot, you look at our building, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be, the carpet needs to be replaced. We have frayed carpet, And I'm one of those people, I'm just going to say this. I believe that your building should look as nice as your houses. Because your houses, I'm sure our houses look nice, right? And this is God's house. So it needs to be reflective of that. And you've done a really good job compared to some other churches I've been in. But at the same time, next year the carpet will be 30 years old. I think this carpet has not been replaced, right? This carpet has not been replaced, and it was built in 1996, so next year's 30 years. This floor, this is one of my pet peeves, is how this floor looks. And we actually had somebody come in to see how much it was going to cost to refinish it, and it's nearly $14,000 to refinish just the wood part of the floor. And so it's astronomical to do stuff like that, even though I would like to have it done. And we need a lot of maintenance. We just replaced an air conditioner in the gym. It ended up being a little bit less than what we anticipated, thank goodness. Because of your generosity at Lent, that left us about $6,000 that we could use to replace another unit when it goes bad, you know, because there will be another unit that goes bad. Last summer we replaced a unit in here, you know. So again, most of those units are 30 plus years old. So we're going to start having trouble with those. So there's still, there's probably more that need to be replaced than have been replaced. But they're smaller units. Yeah, most of the big ones have been replaced, so now it's the smaller units. You have to remember that the district gave us a $75,000 grant right before I arrived to redo the old sanctuary, which we call the Fellowship Hall. I'm still learning the titles for all these spaces. So we put new flooring in there. We also put in 3 mini splits for air conditioning, which is a lot nicer. It's been painted and updated. And so, you know, we're hoping we can find other people who could rent that space to help generate income. We have not spent it all yet. We are also taking the 2 rooms that are across from the bathrooms. There's 2 rooms of green, one's a library and one's another room. We're going to take that middle wall out and redo that space because we need more larger space for groups to meet in. So we're going to take that out. We're going to use the rest of the money from the district and put flooring in there and paint in that space. So we'll be able to use that space for large group meetings as well. Oh, about 10,000 left. Okay. The district superintendent has said absolutely, positively not. That's primarily because our bishop. Prior to our current bishop, when churches closed and properties were sold, the district got to keep the money, which meant that Northern Virginia had a lot of money, you know, because property values up here is astronomical. So we had a lot of money. But our current bishop has said when properties are sold, they're going to the conference trustees. So that's just the way it is. And so that's hurting a lot of stuff for the Northern Virginia district. Even though we're the largest district and have the most people and have the biggest program staff, again. Well, no, the Book of Discipline actually calls for that to happen. We haven't always followed the Book of Discipline in Virginia because we didn't have a lot of churches that were closing and being sold, and so the money went to the districts. That's what's supposed to happen, and she's just said we're going to follow the discipline. Yeah, which we probably should have been doing all along, but didn't necessarily do. Yes, Jenny. Hold on.
Are there any plans to renovate the kitchen in the old church?
There is no money available for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No money available for that. I mean, it was painted recently, and I think new flooring was put in it before I came, but that would be the extent of what we can do right now.
Right.
Unless somebody wins the lottery and pays off our mortgage and gives us another couple $1 million.
Well, there's no active working stove in there.
Yeah.
You know, for smaller groups to use.
Yeah.
So maybe
Well-
if anybody is getting new stove, they might want to donate it.
That might be nice, because it might be nice to have that in that end of the building. So, yes. Any other questions? We will be Workday, the 27th, is related to the narthex down there, that entryway. It's dirty, needs to be painted and cleaned up. It's related to taking down that wall between those rooms so we can get that flooring put in. I'm hopeful that once we get some of those stuffs done, we'll be able to rent this to other groups, you know, that actually pay us rent, you know, for small meeting spaces. Once the old fellowship hall is finished, completely renovated, you know, we're going to actively seek another church that could use the space on a Saturday night or Sunday afternoon, you know, when our current congregation is not there, but we're going to actively seek out other churches that could come in and rent that space to generate income. It's not a lot, but it's more than some. Some people are like, why are you doing that? Well, it's because it's sitting empty most of the time. Let's use the assets. Another way that we're working towards generating more income is the changes that we're making on this end of the building related to preschool. I had hoped that we would be further along than what we are, but we went through a director change this past year. I was concerned about that. I was concerned about the way we were going to operate the preschool this year. But the plan that we put in place, we have 3 people doing 3 separate things, and it seems to be working really well. We have an administrative person who's handling the paperwork. We have a person who's recruiting and advertising, and we have a person who's in charge of education. And that's working, and they work as a team. When our old director resigned, we had 22 students, and in a matter of 8 weeks or so, they went out and recruited enough to get us up to nearly 47, 48 students. I'm hopeful that by the end of the school year, we'll be in the 50s because people are still coming in. But our goal is to be before and after school and all day care because the needs of our community have changed. And the reason that your attendance in the school has decreased through the years is because the majority of people who live in our area need all day care, and we haven't been able to provide that necessarily, so people were going other places. And so now we've got to rebuild on that. The good news is the majority of our new students, the majority of students this year are on the young end, so we have 3 years of them helping us build the program, which is good news for us. So we're not where I'd hoped we would be at this time, but we are making progress to where we need to be. And I think with the 3 people working together, we'll get there. You know, it's just going to take more than 1 year for that to happen. Jenny?
Are we paying or charging a competitive rate to other preschools? I
Yes.
mean, where do we fall in that?
We are in line with other nonprofit organizations that have preschools in their building. Not anywhere near what commercial people charge, but more in line with other churches. And another thing that we're doing and should be done within 45 days is once it's approved, we'll be able to accept government subsidies, which will allow us to serve more people in our community. What we found is a lot of folks who live in these buildings and neighborhoods around us qualify for government subsidies, and their kids can't come to school here because we haven't been able to take those. And so our application has been submitted, and all the paperwork and documentation has been sent in. We're just waiting for Loudoun County and the state of Virginia to sign off on that. And once that happens, I think we'll have other students that we'll be able to reach as well. Now, granted, the government subsidies are not always as much as what we charge, but we also have all these empty spots in our classrooms, so let's take that money and fill them up, you know, and that's just the reality of it. And there are some government subsidy programs, particularly for military families, that actually pay more than what we charge, and we would get that full amount that they pay, from what I understand. So, which would allow us to allow people who have no income to send their kids here. You know, so it kind of balances out. I'll be honest with you. That should be making money to help us fund what we do down here. And it can. I came from a church where it did. I mean, where I came from, they were paying $125,000 in expenses and generating about $225,000 in additional income for the church. So childcare is much needed in our neighborhood. One of the bad things about it is our location. It's hard to know we're here. You know, that's why we depend upon you to tell your friends and neighbors that we're here. Share those Facebook posts, like our preschool daycare center page, share it, you know, as much as possible. Tell your friends and neighbors we're here, so that we're not here just to make money. We're here to provide a service, and we are. We're here to offer education, and we're still offering Christian education as well. We still bring the kids in here for chapel. Pastor Stephen comes in and sings and does Bible stories with them, and so it's still a Christian-based organization, and we're still presenting Christ. And a lot of our students are not from the Christian background, you know, so we are doing that. So, anybody else have any questions about that? About preschool? The other thing that we're working diligently towards, and it's taken, again, everything I'm learning, the staff reminds me all the time, Galilee moves slow sometimes. And so we are seeking to create a separate 501c3 for Backpack Buddies. Not just for Backpack Buddies, but for missions in general, because we don't want it to be limited to just Backpack Buddies, because there's so much more that we could be doing. And the reason we're creating a separate 501c3 is there are lots of organizations out there that will not give money, even for Backpack Buddies, to churches. So if we have a separate 501c3 that our board of directors manages and controls, then we can go out and solicit grants from organizations that won't give money to churches to help fund Backpack Buddies. So that's why we've created a separate, or in the process of creating a separate 501c3. But it's not just for Backpack Buddies. It could be to help people in our community. It could be to help with education. The gamut is broad. It's not limited, because there's a lot of money in Loudoun County for education and food and all these other things that we can't tap into that we could use to help people in our community. So that's why the 501c3 is being created. We hope that it will be done by April. And a lot of folks have said, why don't you partner with another 501c3? Well, we thought about doing that, partnering with Tom and them's 501c3, but a lot of the grants for Backpack Buddies can't be passed through from a receiving organization to another organization. So we're kind of stuck. You know, there's no good way around it except to do our own 501c3. And so we're in the process of doing that to help fund missions, local missions primarily. So hopefully that'll be done and approved before long. We're grateful for the team that's working on that. Stuart is helping with our paperwork, and John and a bunch of other folks are on the board, and so they're making plans for that. Until then, Felicia's still seeking grants that we do qualify for to help fund Backpack Buddies for this coming year. Rebecca. Well, have we identified organizations that we're going to apply for grants for the 501c3? Felicia already knows of some that are out there that simply won't take our applications because we're a church now. So there's already some. So I'm sure there's others in the county that we're not aware of, but if people are aware of those, we'd be happy to hear.
I just submitted on Thursday a $10,000 grant to Loudoun Impact. The next grant that we will be applying for will be the 100 Women Strong, and their grant goes up to $25,000. But again, one of the problems that we're having with the Backpack Buddies program is whenever I have to submit a budget in the grant, the church budget goes in there. So it looks like to the outsiders, why do you need money when you have money in the budget? But again, the Backpack Buddies is not incorporated in the church every day-to-day operations. So the 501c3, when we once it's on board, when I submit a budget, it would only reflect Backpack Buddies program, not the church itself. So which will help us get more funding and get more money. Money's coming in.
Yep. So, anybody have any questions about the 501c3 and why we're trying to do that? Yeah. We're hopeful that, some of those 501c3s allow us to pay, some of those grants allow us to pay salaries of the person helping run in the Backpack Buddies program, which would free up money on the church end. Some of them also allow us to pay rental space, which we could, the space that they're using, they could pay us a little bit of money for rent to help pay the light bill, if nothing else, because that has to be air conditioned all the time and heated. Rebecca. Yeah. Well, she would continue to do what she does now, and any money that comes in from the 501c3 to the church would primarily be from rental space. So if rent, for instance, came in, or if we needed to pay a bookkeeper, because if we might end up with a separate bookkeeper for the 501c3. So finance is there, but any money that would come in from the 501c would in some ways help offset what she's doing. So she would continue to be a church employee. Yep, continue to be a church employee.
And to incorporate as state monies, we added $12,000, so we estimated maybe $1,000 a month to rent the space like this, like it was funny. I added it in the grant so that, as Pastor Mike said, that the church can benefit off the program in the space.
Yeah. Well, pay the light bill, in essence. Yep. So it's one thing. Anybody have any questions? Any other questions about that? Let me talk about the discipleship and donuts, because I know when we had this meeting last year, people wanted to bring back traditional Sunday school, and I'm kind of a big proponent of that. Because the reason I am is because we've had young families who've come and said, we can't stay here because you don't have Sunday school, because they want Sunday school for their kids. And so they've gone to Crossroads. And I want to stop that. They have enough people. Leave a few of those folks here for us. So, but we also went out and tried to recruit people to help us run Sunday school, and we didn't get enough volunteers. So we're doing discipleship and donuts and hoping to generate enough enthusiasm and volunteers that we can bring back in January or February or traditional Sunday school for children, youth, and adults. So this is the first step towards bringing back a more traditional Sunday school Christian education program on Sunday morning for people. So again, first step in a process that's taken way too long. But again, when was the last time you all had Sunday school? Pre-COVID. Did you stop before COVID or did you stop during COVID? So, number one, we made a mistake by not bringing back Sunday school immediately when the church reopened. And so now we're 5 years behind, right? And so we had to catch up. And so it's going to take more than a couple of months. And I'm not criticizing anybody for that. It's just a lot of churches did it, and a lot of churches are in the place we are right now. They don't have Sunday school, so they don't have young families. So we need to change that. Anybody have any other questions about what's going on or what might be happening or anything you want to know? Because that's why we're here. It's your church. I'm just your spiritual leader and the administrative leader and whatever else that you want me to do. That's my job. Kathy. Yes. So I'm in the process, and I've been praying about it and seeking people, and so this is a good opportunity. Thank you, Kathy. The pastor serves as chairperson of the nominating committee. That means that we help select people to lead the congregation. So we have committees that have to have members. We have finance committee and SPRC and trustees and what we call our ministry council that has to have members. And so it's my job to help recruit those people. So we have been operating on a shoestring SPRC and a shoestring trustees and a shoestring finance committee for years. But we need to fix that, particularly where trustees are concerned. So if you feel called or led to help with trustees, let me say what trustees is. Trustees are primarily the legal entity of the church. You're covered by the church insurance policy. You are the legal representatives of the church. You're also responsible for physical assets and financial assets of the church. Finance committee is somewhat too, but the trustees dictate how the money is invested or kept. So if that's something that you have skills with or you would be interested in, we probably need, I've got two, and we got two. I need about, maybe three. I need about 5 other individuals to be a trustee, to be quite frankly. Now, our church is like many other large churches in that your senior pastor will be appointed as a trustee at the church conference. And let me tell you why that is. And it is because our previous bishop said that large church pastors need to be a trustee. And I can tell you from experience, a horrible experience, when your senior pastor is not a trustee and there is a legal issue, it is difficult for the church's attorneys to talk to the pastor, because the attorneys only represent the legal entity of the church. And when there's an issue that becomes a legal issue, and believe it or not, churches have legal issues, and when there's an issue that comes, and I'm explaining this because somebody asked me why I was going to be a trustee, so I'm going to tell you why. When there's a legal issue that requires the senior pastor, who should know what's going on in the church, to talk to the church's attorneys, then the pastor has to have an attorney that they have to pay for themselves. And then it gets more complicated if the conference gets involved, because then you've got the conference attorneys and the bishop's attorneys and the pastor's attorneys and the church's attorneys taking care of an issue. And that is just hell on earth, trust me. Been there, dealt with it for 18 months. It's horrible, cost me $25,000. So that's why I'm going to be a trustee. I'm not going to vote on issues related to spending money or anything like that, but I'm only there for the legal purposes, so that if anything ever happens, I can talk to the church attorney without having to hire an attorney. And it should never be that way, but that's Virginia law, and that's just the way it is. So if you're interested in serving on trustees, send me an email. Don't tell me, because I'll forget. People tell me stuff all the time, and I always say, please send me an email. Finance committee, we need people who know who can help with raise finances. Finance and stewardship in this church is one and the same. So stewardship is how do we raise money, and how do we generate stewardship, and finance is paying the bills and spending the money. So if you're into that, Charlie would love more help, wouldn't you, Charlie? We've had some new people join us. One of the things that we've been very intentional about is making sure that we include the people at the chapel, on the committee. So we've been bringing in people from the chapel on the committees, because we're one church, 2 locations, right? So their money comes here, so they should have a say, right? And they do. And so we've been very intentional about that this past year. SPRC is the human relations department of the church. They deal with staff issues. They deal with issues with pastors and staff and church members and pastors and church members. And so if you're an HR person or you're into that, Nicole would be happy to answer some questions. She's currently serving as our chairperson. She'd be happy to answer some questions. We're fortunate to have the folks that we have on SPRC and the experience they have. Last year we added Rebecca, which is good because she used to work for the church, so she brings a different perspective to SPRC. And then, Nicole's job is HR, so that, those folks are helpful. So if that's something that you can serve with, we welcome that. The ministry council is the comprehensive decision-making body of the church. So they decide what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward. Currently we probably have 25 people. One of the things that I'm going to encourage the ministry council to do as we move forward is look at operating under simplified accountable structure, which is a new system of government that the United Methodist Church has approved, where it takes less people to run the church. So you have less meetings, thank God. Because I don't know if you know this, but I go to trustees meeting, I go to finance meeting, I go to staff parish relations committee meeting, I go to ministry council meeting. You know what happens at each one of those 4 meetings? We talk about the exact same thing 4 times, basically, for the most part, before it gets voted on. And the simplified accountable structure, which I want us to move towards in the fall of 2026, would have 1 meeting and address all those things. So that's something I want us to move towards. And Jason had talked about it, and then COVID happened, and Jason talked about it again, and then it didn't pick up a lot of steam, and then I think Jason was talking about it again, and Jason got moved. Not because he was talking about that, but because he's so good, they moved him somewhere else. So I want to bring it back and continue that conversation, because I think it frees up people. Right now we have about 25 people on ministry council. We'd only have between 9 and 12 people on the simplified accountable structure. That frees up 13 people to go and serve, who don't have to come to a meeting. So let's get people out of meetings and get them doing stuff, volunteering to paint and tear down walls and wash windows or whatever else we need done. So Deb. Well, I'm sorry you don't, because last year after church conference, we gave out a packet and said, here are our budget and here are our leaders. It's all included in that packet of information that we gave. And that's why I gave them out, because I know that they had not been passed out. They'd just been online for a year or two, and people didn't know where they were. So I printed and gave them out so that people would know who they are. It lists every committee and every chairperson of every committee. You are correct. Yep. Oh, okay, well, so you missed it. Yeah. I think we'll make sure that we put it in the newsletter that they'll be available after church conference this year. We'll have another packet available with the budget and we also gave our ministry report, all the stuff we did, and the budget and officers were all included. Pastor's report. If you want to know how much I make, it's in there. If you want to know how much Pastor Steve makes, it's in there. We don't list other staff members' salaries. That's just not fair, but we do list clergy salaries and benefits in that package so that you know.
Could we have a permanent posting somewhere of our staff members? I mean, like the 25 people and et cetera, that we could look at, as we go through the narthex to say, oh, so-and-so's on that committee, or so-and-so's with this. Because handing out a packet, which is nice, when you need to talk to someone, you're not going to have that packet available. So I think a permanent posting of that would be helpful.
Okay, we can try to make that happen somewhere after church conference. Well, I'm sure it's already on the website. I'm pretty sure, but oh, it's not on the website. I don't even know. Yeah. Good point. You have to be given a code to access it. You can't just access the church directory without a code. So we control who gets the codes. Well, and so if you want a church directory, I just don't know what to tell you, because that's the easiest, most efficient way to do one. And I refused to bring in a church directory company, because I've dealt with them from the pastor's perspective, and they are horrible. I mean, I had one guy ask a lady who was overweight when her baby was due and left her in tears. And another one said inappropriate things to my spouse and other people's spouses. So I just am not into that. So online directories is the best way to go, I think, as secure as possible. What else? Other questions related to that? And I wish we had some kind of directory, because I still don't know people, because people quit wearing their name tags. So please wear your name tags. I wear mine so you know who I am. Staff members wear theirs so you know who they are. And if you want one of these, we'll order you one of these. I think they're like $7 or $8. But we'll get you one of those instead of the kind you wear around your neck, if you help pay for it, because you saw our finances. What else? Another thing that we're going to do different this year is in the month of October, which is typically Pastor Church Staff Appreciation Month, we're going to take up the staff Christmas love offering. In the past, the love offering has been taken up during Advent, which means that the staff typically gets that a couple days before Christmas or sometimes after Christmas, and it's not helpful to them if they need it to buy Christmas presents with. So, or to go on Christmas vacation to get away from church or whatever. So we're going to do it during the month of October, and yes, we will have available during the month of November. We'll mention it, that if you weren't here, you can still give towards it, or if new people come in, they can still give towards it. But we're trying to do that so we don't have Christmas offerings and Christmas missions and all that stuff taking place during the month of October. During the month of November and December, we're trying to split it out so we're not asking you for 100 things at one time. And I'm going to explain that starting in October while we're doing it that way. Try to spread it out so we're not asking you for so many things at once. because your staff do a great job, you know, and so to take opportunity to appreciate them is wonderful and is much appreciated from each one of them. Anything else that you have questions about what we're doing, about what we need to do? Oh, so this is a biggie. In the next couple of weeks when you come to church, you'll see a change in some of the parking out front. Visitor parking, and I'm going to ask, once we move visitor parking over there, that we please leave visitor parking for visitors. Right now, we don't necessarily do that. But once we move guest parking on the other side of the main entrance, there'll be 3 spaces on the other side of the main entrance, and we're putting in 6 or 7 new reserved spots on Sunday morning for seniors on this side, and a couple of more handicap spots. And we have the signs, we're just waiting for them to get them put up. And we're putting in one, which I would advocate for more, but right now it's at least one spot that's designated for parking with families with young children. So it doesn't look like we're just a senior adult church. So you'll see more of those go in as we have more young families come to church. But so there will be more handicap parking over here, and there will be more seniors only Sunday mornings on this side of the parking lot as well. So the signs are here, we just got to get them put up. So honor that if you can, and if you're able to make it easier for our seniors. It's really bad when we see some of our, Miss Felicia and I are typically outside on the sidewalk welcoming people, and we see them having to park way down there or way down there, and they're have a difficult time getting here. So we're going to make it available for them. During the week, you can park there, you know, but on Sunday morning, save it for the older folks or those of us who are getting older. I won't be parking there for a while, but anybody else have any other things? I am excited for where we are. I mean, I think we've, you know, with the uncertainties that you went through last year with pastoral change, hiring a new full-time senior pastor, full-time associate pastor, and all the other stuff that you've gone through, I think we're way ahead of the game. Between new members at the chapel and new members here, if we're fortunate and continue at the rate going, we'll probably end the year with 40 new members. Most of the people who joined this morning are all new people. I mean, Lisa, I think, has been here the longest in 2 years, and she decided to join. But almost everybody else who stood up here are new people. And then the other 2 folks who are going to join and weren't able to be here because they were sick, also new people to the congregation. I'm glad that there was younger folks who were up here this morning as well. You know, and if you've noticed, we've been seeing more younger families come to worship. And the more programs we do for children, and the more programs we do for youth, the more young families we'll have. That's why it's important we bring back traditional Sunday school. You know, I know of at least 4 families that left because we didn't have traditional Sunday school. That was 8 kids and 8 adults who left because we didn't have traditional Sunday school. So we really need to work on bringing that back as quickly as possible. So you know, we could have already be at the 40 mark for the year and been pushing 50, but we lost 16 people because we didn't have Sunday school, which is sad. That means 8 less children, 8 less youth, you know, in our church. So, anybody else have any other questions? Suggestions? I mean, I'm open to suggestions. I'm always afraid of suggestions, but anybody have any suggestions about things you want us to work on or that you think that need to be worked on? There's one thing that we need to work on. I'm going to ask you all, and we're going to talk about this as we move forward, is as you think about retirement and the inevitable, and we all know what that is, right? Think about ways that your generosity to Galilee can continue. Most churches in Northern Virginia that have been around for 60 plus years have anywhere from $4 to $8 million in endowments. And you know what they do with that money from those endowments? Do you know how much money comes from $8 million in endowments? Enough to pay staff and maintain the building and all those other things. And we have $650,000 in endowment. That's a shame. If we want to leave a legacy for Galilee in the future, those of us who are still here need to be thinking about including Galilee in our planned estate giving, you know. I had one gentleman in one church who loved the church so much that he went out and bought a life insurance policy. And so that when he died, he'd still be able to give to his church. You know, he died 2 years later and left them over $1 million. They are. If you do that, premiums are considered contributions to the church. And then your church gets, you know, whatever you leave when you die. And if the church is going to survive in the future, that's something that we need to talk about, that we haven't done a good job talking about, obviously, because we don't have $8 million, you know, in endowments, but we need to work on that. Anybody else have anything else? I know you all get tired of me talking about money, but we have to talk about money because this is we have 40,000 square feet, 40,000 square feet of space that we have to maintain, heat and cool, paint, keep up. Plus you have staff and programs that we have to do. So I do have to talk about money. I don't like it any more than you do. I hate it. But starting in October, we're going to do our stewardship. I'm not going to do it in November because it's too close to Christmas. I get tired of that. We're going to do stewardship in October as well and be done with it so that we can move into a joyous season of Advent and not be talking about money. And we'll see how that goes. Last year, you know, pledging increased by about 30 or 40%, I think, was roughly the numbers, 30 or 40%. So I'm hoping if we get another 30 or 40%, we might have most of our budget pledged, right? And then the loose plate offering will be the excess that we can use to do some of the other stuff that we don't have budgeted, like carpet and whatever else that needs to be taken care of. So thank you guys. I'm still excited about being here. It's a great church. You guys are great. We do a lot of good. Tell your friends about what we're doing. Invite them to come to church with you on Sunday morning. Miss Felicia's always out there with a smile, greeting people when they walk in the door and making sure everybody feels welcome. And so, as well as our greeters at the front doors. So, you know, you're going to be welcomed here. We have to have reasons for them to stay here. And they stay here because of the people. They don't stay here because of me. They stay here because of you. So, anybody else?